Hi everyone, and welcome to lecture 15. And in this lecture we'll be going over data frames. So let's go ahead and start off with our regular imports. So what we're going to do is we're going to import NumPy as NP for array handling. And then what I'm going to do is import, I'm going to say import pandas as PD, and that's the regular convention for importing pandas. And now what I'm going to say is from pandas import series comma data frame. And the reason for that is because we use series and data frames so often in this course that it's better to just import series and data frame on their own than having to write pd.series or pd.dataframe when we use them. So these are three really standard imports that you're going to see constantly throughout this course. Okay, so we're going to learn about data frames. So in order to have a data frame and see what it looks like and how it works, we're going to need some data to play with. So we can go ahead and grab some NFL data from Wikipedia. And the way I'm going to do this is by importing web browser. And this is Python's built-in method to grab a web page. And then I'm going to say websites equal to, and I'm just going to edit copy and edit paste this link, but it's just the wikipedia.org page for the NFL win-loss records. And you can go ahead and check on NBViewer or on my GitHub for that link there in case you don't want to type it out yourself. And then in order to open this web page, I can just say web browser dot open, and then I open that URL, which I set as an object website. So if I hit Shift Enter, it takes me straight to that web page. So here we have a little bit of a spreadsheet, if you will, of different NFL win-loss records. We have various columns and various rows. So what we're going to do here is there's many ways to create a data frame. But for now, since we're just interested in the inner workings of a data frame and not how to create one from scratch, I'm going to show you how to copy and read data using pandas in order to grab a data frame. So let's go ahead and just edit copy, edit paste the first 5 rows here. So I've highlighted them. I've selected edit copy. And now that whole section is on my clipboard. And I can copy and read data from my clipboard, which is really awesome. And what I'll do here is I'll make an object called NFL underscore frame. And that's going to be our data frame name. So I have NFL underscore frame. And to read everything I have on the clipboard, I do pd dot read underscore clipboard. Close parentheses, no extra arguments. And now pandas has a built-in function to try to read everything that's on your clipboard and set it into a data frame. So if we actually just see what that data frame looks like by calling that object, Shift Enter, you can see that pandas has transformed everything that was on the clipboard into a data frame. So you can think of a data frame as almost like a spreadsheet or an Excel spreadsheet. And if you notice here on top, we have the column names. And on the left hand here, this very first column, that 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's actually the index of the data frame. And pandas does that automatically. If you notice here, that wasn't actually included, so don't confuse that with the rank. Pandas will automatically make an index here. And in future lectures, we'll learn how to rename that index or make index hierarchies. But for now, let's just learn a bit about the data frame. If you want to grab the column names off a data frame, that's actually quite simple with pandas. You just call NFL underscore frame dot columns, and then pandas will return to you the name of every single column. And don't worry about this U. But now you have the names that you need to call in order to get those columns. And there's 2 ways you can grab a column name. You can have your data frame name and then dot the column name, and it will return to you a series with that those values in that column. So you can see here we have the rank, or we could also say, for instance, team, and it'll return the teams. Now you're not going to be able to do this with columns that have more than one word in it. For example, first season. The way you grab those columns is with an index call, if you will. And I say index just because of the formatting of the brackets, not because it's an actual index call. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing. But you can call it like this for first season. And now we have all the values in that first season column. So it's just important to note, you need to spell and format your column name exactly like it's spelled in your data frame. And the way you can make sure of that is just by calling this .columns, and Pandas will report to you what it's expecting to be called if it wants you to grab that column. So first season matches up with first season here. Great. So let's go ahead and grab multiple columns. So we can do that. We can actually call a data frame. So we can say data frame, grab data from the NFL underscore frame, and set the columns we want to grab. And I can actually pass a list of columns. So I'll say I want the team column, the first season column, and then the total games. So what I've done now is I've actually created a new data frame from my NFL frame, and I've grabbed the columns that I wanted. So now I have my team, my first season, and my total games played. And let's go ahead and check what happens if we ask for a column that doesn't exist. So for instance, let's say I just copy and paste this. And let's say I had included in my list a stadium column. Now if you note here in our original data frame, there is no stadium column. So let's see how Pandas deals with this. I'll shift enter here. And instead of returning an error, what's really nice about Pandas is it just fills in that column with all null or non-applicable values. So you have a bunch of null values here, but your data frame still works. Great. So now let's go ahead and see how we can retrieve rows off a data frame. So let's go ahead and see what our data frame looks like again. NFL frame. Great. Now, another quick note to say, if I wanted to retrieve just the first few rows of a data frame, I could say NFL underscore frame, your data frame name, dot head, and it'll retrieve to you the first 5 rows. Or if you pass a number through it, it'll retrieve the first 3 rows, the first 2 rows, etc., etc. And if you want the end rows, you can do the same with just tail. And now it'll give you the last 2, the last 3. By default, that number is always 5. So if you just call head or tail here, since we only have 5 rows, it'll actually just return the whole data frame in this particular case. But you can use tail and head to grab either the last rows or the first rows, depending on which one you call. So that's one way to grab rows. But let's say we want to retrieve rows on a particular index. The way we can do that is by calling our data frame, NFL frame, and then we pass the ix method for index. And then let's say I want everything that's on index 3. And that gives me back the Miami's Dolphins information. So remember, Pandas, and in Python in general with NumPy, indexing always starts at 0. So I'm grabbing the 4th column or 4th row by inputting index 3. And now I have a returned object with all the information on that row. So that's one way you can retrieve information. You can also assign values to entire columns. So for instance, I grab my NFL frame, and let's go ahead and grab that stadium column. and I can set my equal sign in order to assign values to it. So I can see, let's say, Levi's Stadium. And something to note to be careful here, since I have a single quote there, I need to use double quotes to end my string. Just a quick note. So what is this going to do if we go ahead and check it out? Now let's see what happened to our data frame. So pandas now, if you only pass that one argument to assigning it to an entire column, it'll fill in that entire column with that particular stadium name or whatever value you happen to be working with. Great. So let's try another example to make sure we really understand this. I'll grab my data frame column again. I'll do it the stadium column again. And let's say I wanted to pass in some numbers. So just put numbers for every stadium, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can do that by just calling np.arrange, as we've seen in the past. And since I have 5 rows, I need to pass one more in my arrange. And what was the error here? If we look at it, notice the length of values does not match the length of index. So I actually only have, I only have 5 rows there. So now that makes sense. Remember, the indexing starts at 0. So 5 was the correct there. I apologize for that. And now if we look at what happens with our data frame, now we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So those numbers that NumPy arranged for us. And again, sorry about that previous mistake, but since you have 5 rows, you import NumPy arrange 5. Okay, great. So what if I want to add a series to a data frame? How do I do that? I can say stadiums, let's make a new object called stadiums, is equal to series. And then let's go ahead and pass a list. So I'll say, again, Levi's Stadium. And then I'll have my AT&T Stadium as another series object. And I'll set this to have an index of 50. Okay, so let's see what stadiums looks like now. Great. So if you notice, we actually are going to be out of index, so let's go ahead and change that to 40. Make sure that works. Okay, great. So what I have here now is a series where I've put in 2 values into my series as a list, and I've assigned them that index. So 1, 4 for Levi Stadium, and then a 0 index for AT&T Stadium. So how do I input that into my data frame? Well, it's actually pretty simple. I just say NFL underscore frame. I call that data frame. And then I call that column that's on that data frame. And then just set it equal to stadiums. And now if we check out what that data frame looks like, we can see that it's actually assigned stadiums to the NFL data frame. And again, Pandas takes care of null values really, really well and fill those in for you where it didn't have the information. You can also delete entire columns, and you can do that just by calling del and then whatever the column you want to delete is. So in this case, let's go ahead and delete that stadium column. And if we check out what the data frame looks like now, you can see that entire column has been deleted. Great. So we went over how to kind of mess around with a data frame, and we constructed that data frame just by copying and pasting. You can also construct data frames by passing in dictionaries. and I'll show you how to do that right now. So let's just go ahead and make another object called data, and I'm going to make a dictionary for this. So my dictionary is going to have two keys. It's going to have city, and that's going to be a list that we'll fill in a little bit, and then it's also going to have population, and again that will be a list. So let's say I want 3 different entries here. So let's go SF, LA, NYC, and then my population, I just looked up these numbers a little earlier, so it's going to be 83700, comma 388.123. So LA has quite a large population, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So now I have my dictionary here. Let's run it, make sure it works out. Okay, great. So you can construct a data frame just by passing a dictionary. And I'll show you how to do that. So we'll make a new data frame called city_frame. I'll have it be called data frame, and I can pass in that dictionary. And let's go ahead and see what that looks like. Great. So pandas can automatically take in a dictionary as long as it's constructed correctly, and these lists match up as far as number of data points in them, and it'll automatically construct that data frame for you. So there's a ton of ways to create data frames in pandas, and we'll be exploring them as we move on throughout this course. But for a full way of creating data frames, I'm going to edit, copy, and edit paste this link here. You can just check out the documentation, and if you go to the link here provided, pandas.dataframe, it gives you all the API methods you can use on that data frame. And if you just keep exploring throughout this documentation on data frames, you'll learn all the different ways you can construct data frames. So from dictionaries, from records, from CSV files, and we'll learn how to do all that throughout this course. But for now, that's just a quick overview on what the data frame is in pandas. You can think of it just basically as a spreadsheet, and hopefully a few methods for you to mess around with columns and rows names. So this is going to be one of our main tools in data analysis throughout this course. So I encourage you to check out the documentation on the Pandas website. All right, thanks guys, and I'll see you at the next lecture.